Okay, guys, I've got the legend. He's back again. I'm annoying him for the last few weeks, but he's back. The LFC reporter for the Athletic UK, JamesPearce. James, welcome. Welcome back.
Hi, Dave. How are you? You okay?
I'm absolutely brilliant. And we're going to obviously talk about Liverpool, but I mean, the crazy times that we've just talked about a few minutes ago, it's just surreal. I mean, I think football actually gets a lot of people's minds away from the craziness in the world, from the elections in America to pandemics. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think football is just a bit of an escape, I think, isn't it, for a lot of people at the moment from, just how grim things are with the lockdown, which, just when you thought we'd seen the worst of it a few months ago and there seemed to be light at the end of the tunnel, then obviously the infection rate crept back up again, especially so in the Merseyside area. And now we're back in a full-on lockdown. So, just grateful that the football's continuing because, if that stopped, we'd really be struggling.
No pubs open, even worse.
Exactly, yeah.
But the other thing as well, I noticed they have Klopp doing like an ad campaign to get tested. I think that was a very good idea, actually.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense because I think when they announced a few days ago that Liverpool was going to be used as almost a bit of a guinea pig for, to try and test an entire city, I think immediately I think people kind of think, well, hang on a minute, what's the motivation behind that? Should we buy into it? Because quite understandably so, there's a lot of distrust of the government down in London, especially with the way that they've treated this area over the years. So I think it was important that the local council, the mayor Joe Anderson, backed it, but still I think it gives it even more kind of power and strength, the fact that Jurgen Klopp and the players have come out, because I think the reality is the motivation behind this is it's hopefully a quicker way to get the lockdown finished in terms of and get Liverpool out of tier 3, to get businesses going again, hopefully to get fans back into stadiums, because I think you get everyone tested, then at least then we know that anyone that does test positive then self-isolates for a few weeks, and then that limits the spread of the virus, which cause even speaking from personal experience, like I've had mates who have tested positive for it despite having almost no symptoms whatsoever. Like one of them just didn't have a sense of smell and thought, I better go and get checked out. I can't have it though because I'm fine, and turned out they were positive. And obviously, wow. So the sooner everyone knows whether they're carrying it or not, the better to try and limit the spread. So yeah, I think I've had a busy day today, so I haven't rushed down to one of the test centres yet, but I will be early next week for sure.
Absolutely brilliant, yeah. We'll get into the Liverpool stuff, of course. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here. Ever since the Everton game, the derby, which was they usually are crazy, but that was just a crazy derby. The club, Twitter went mad. VVD out for the season. We thought everything was that was it. Season's over. Wrap it up. Null and void. Thiago with an injury could have been worse than it was, really, if he would have been caught. He was lucky. The Hendo disallowed goal, but we've really kicked on since then. And I think that's the personification of mentality joints for me, what we've done in the last few weeks.
Yeah, 100%. I think Klopp kind of probably summed it up perfectly with the meeting he had at Melwood in the aftermath of the derby, when he said to them, we can't let that one day define our season. He said, the noise outside the club will tell you this is when the wheels come off. People are fearing for what will happen. What are Liverpool without Virgil van Dijk? And he said to them, I believe in all of you. I've still got a huge amount of belief in the quality in this room that we can still push on and challenge and win trophies this season. And the proof's been in the pudding, really. With it's I think you're right. We have seen the resilience and the mentality of this group really come to the fore, because I certainly didn't expect Liverpool to go and win 5 out of 5 without Van Dijk, and as you said, it's not just Van Dijk, it's without Thiago, without Matip, without Keita, of course Fabinho's injury, a couple of those games.
Alisson was in before that
as well. Yeah, so obviously getting Alisson back has been massive. There's been some other dodgy VAR decisions thrown in. So, it hasn't always been pretty, probably over the last month into football-wise. I think that was why kind of that demolition of Atalanta the other night was just an absolute joy to watch, because it felt like it had been quite a while since you could almost just sit back, relax, and enjoy a Liverpool performance. Because although the 4 games before that had been won, they'd all been won. It was a real struggle. They had to really dig deep and fight for it, whilst suddenly against Atalanta, the fluency was back.
Yeah, that's true. Like the 2-1s, we are 1-0 down in most of them games and coming back to win. They're lovely wins, though. 1-0 down and coming back to win 2-1. I mean, they're the type of wins that win you leagues, win you trophies, really, aren't they? They're the wins. Yeah. But as you said, do you know what's been a big thing for me? Young Rhys Williams. Now, I didn't know much about him, to be honest. I know you followed the under-23s and a lot more than I would. Can you tell us more about that young lad? He looks really comfortable on the ball, doesn't he?
Yeah, I must admit, I've rated him highly for a number of years, and he was. I watched the under-18s go all the way in the FA Youth Cup. Was that just over 2 years ago now? And he was one of the absolute stars of that team. And he did. You never want to burden a player with, undue expectations, but you did look at him and think he's a bit of a mini Van Dijk, this kid, because he, is similar kind of frame on him, similar kind of running style. Also, just calm and composed. Nothing seems to really ruffle his feathers. But clearly at the time, you think there's still a massive leap to go from that with the under-18s to proving that you can do it in senior football, and probably especially when you play in his position, because traditionally centre backs don't, they mature later than probably other outfield players. That's why Joe Gomez is such a rarity, really, someone who's been at the top level for as long as he had, despite the fact he's still only 23. So I think with Rhys Williams, they just felt the only thing that was probably lacking wasn't a technical thing. It was just the physicality. And that was why Alex Inglethorpe and Neil Critchley and Barry Lutus and the other coaches at the academy just felt he would really benefit from dropping into non-league last season. And it was very, very rare for Liverpool to send a kid that they rate so highly to non-league, because usually a loan would be to the Championship or League One or League Two. But I think they just thought, well, realistically, an 18-year-old centre back isn't going to command regular game time in the Football League. So why not? Why not drop down a bit further? And I think also it says a lot about Rhys and his personality and character, that rather than go, hang on a minute, you want me to go where? Kidderminster Harriers. I'm a Liverpool player. He actually went, 100%, I'll do it. And I think the proof's there, how much he benefited from that time away. And with Kiva O'Neill, one of my colleagues at The Athletic, we did a joint piece recently speaking to people down at Kidderminster that played alongside Rhys. And, I think what shone through was his impeccable attitude in terms of, it's a different world at that level when you're washing your own kit, having to fend for yourself, having to, at Liverpool, you're pampered in terms of everything being done for you at that level. You have to fight for yourself. But he really embraced it. He had his nose broken. He got concussed. He got sent off. He got booed on a Tuesday night at Spennymoor and all these little non-league grounds that he probably thought he would never ever grace. He was there, but I think he had 3 managers over the course of the season as well. The ownership of the club changed. It was just an amazing experience for him. And he's massively impressed Klopp, because I think obviously pre-season we heard a lot about Billy Koumetio and how he'd really forced his way into Klopp's reckoning, and just circumstances led to Rhys getting an opportunity. With Billy Koumetio's had injuries of his own this season. Suddenly Rhys thrown in at the deep end with the injury situation, and sometimes that's just what a young player needs. I mean, I remember although Trent was rated very highly, let's not forget Trent's full Premier League debut came at Old Trafford when Nathaniel Clyne was ruled out at short notice. So sometimes you get thrown in and you find out a lot more about a player. And certainly so far, Rhys Williams has covered himself in glory.
Do you know what? It reminds me of Rob Jones, who played at Old Trafford, I think on his debut. Is that right when he signed for Crewe Alexandra?
Yeah.
I mean, he was
Yeah.
thrown in.
He
I
kept
mean,
Ryan
years
Giggs,
ago. Yeah, years ago, you used to do that. I remember Roy Keane, his first game for Nottingham Forest was at Anfield. And I remember the game because it was on BBC Radio 5. This is before the Sky days, by the way. And I was listening to it on the radio. And it's, who's this Irish? Because especially being Irish, Cork guy, who's this guy? Like, 2 days later, he just sitting on the bus. I mean, there are different days, I know. But sometimes it is worth throwing them in. Let's see what these boys do. Maybe. It's rarer though nowadays. It's very rare, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely rare. It's certainly become less regular. But I think as well I think you look at there's lots of players who have got stories like that where as good as they were in terms of ability, you still need the opportunities to come your way, and especially at a club like Liverpool where they're operating at such a ridiculously high level that it's not easy to get those opportunities. And and I think all you can do as a young player is to be ready and waiting to try and make the most of the ones that come your way. And I think Rhys Williams could end up saving Liverpool a fortune because you go back 3 or 4 weeks and that it was like Liverpool will have to go and buy a centre back in January. Now they I think you could still make a very strong argument that they probably still do need to, especially with Joel Matip's injury problems. But you look at Rhys Williams and you think he's still only 19, and we know how good Klopp is at developing young talent and helping them fulfil their potential. So it is really exciting to think what he could become.
Absolutely. And another player we'll tip on is Diogo Jota. What an impact that guy has made. Even Klopp, I seen him in today at the press conference. He was going, it's very rare for players to come in that quick and hit the ground running, like unbelievable.
Yeah. And it's, because usually we talk about having to adapt to the pressure and expectation of life as a Liverpool player, and also just the adaptation to Klopp's methods, which you look at someone like Fabinho, Robertson, Oxlade-Chamberlain. These players all needed months really to kind of really bed in. I think probably what helped Jota a little bit, and I think Klopp touched upon this the other night, was that there are parallels between Liverpool's style and Wolves' style. But he just, the biggest compliment you could pay him is he just looks like he's been a Liverpool player for years because he has slotted in so well. And I think he's just given the attack a whole new dimension. And, that's not derogatory in terms of Roberto Firmino, who's an unbelievable player who's played a massive part in Liverpool's rise to the top of English football. And he still will have a huge role to play, Firmino. But I think Jota just gives Liverpool another real high quality option. And it's crazy to think, I think I was looking at it, and I think not since Robbie Fowler in 1993 has someone scored, as many goals in their first 10 games for the club. Was it 7 already?
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely.
10, was it? 10.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. So he's absolutely flying. And that's why I just think, personally, I just don't see how you can not find room for him in that team to face Man City at the Etihad on Sunday, because confidence is such a precious commodity in football, and Jota must feel like at the moment everything he touches turns to gold. So I really hope that he's in the starting 11 come Sunday.
That's what I was going to tip on right now. Obviously, a huge game the weekend, City Liverpool. It's not a league defining. It has been over the last few seasons, but we've a bit of a game in hand. But it's certainly a game you don't want to lose. But I mean, obviously, Thiago's out. I think that was confirmed today.
Yeah.
Which is, I would have loved to see him even on the bench. It would have been a big bonus. But what do you think? Do you think Jota will start, or maybe Matip might start?
I certainly think Matip will start. Yeah, I'd be really surprised if Matip didn't. Sorry, I think the feeling with him at the moment is because of the injuries, it probably would have been too big an ask to put him through 90 in midweek and then 90 again at the weekend. As well as Rhys Williams has done, and as well as Nat Phillips did last weekend, I just think, Klopp was eulogising today about, the quality that Guardiola's side still possesses. Yeah. Says it's the most difficult game for him in world football for a club team. So I would expect him to go with Matip alongside Gomez at the back. In terms of the front three, I just think it's so difficult to call. I mean, again today, Klopp was so defensive in terms of Firmino, and rightly so in terms of saying that the number of games that we've won thanks to Bobby, not just when he scored, but when he hasn't scored with what he gives us, and that's why I think despite Jota's weight of goals, that is why it is such a 50-50 call for me, which one he goes with, because also Firmino's record against Man City is very, very good. He is heavily influenced. When I think about when Liverpool have shone against City, more often than not, Firmino has been at the absolute heart of everything best about Liverpool. So, and of course, the game doesn't need to be won in the first 50, 60 minutes. Klopp may well decide that I go with Firmino, and then I use what a player Jota is to throw on with half an hour to go against hopefully a tiring Man City backline. So I mean personally, I would play Jota and not Firmino just because because of those reasons I said before. Out just when you've got a player in that much in such a rich vein of form. I think you look at it from the viewpoint of Man City's defenders, and who would you probably least like to face? I think it would have to be Jota at the moment.
Oh, wow, yeah. I mean, even the midfield three, I presume you go Hendo, Gini, Fabinho. I mean, I'd say that's the three.
I mean, Fabinho will be missing. So
that's the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think again, it's probably that third spot in terms of who fills the third spot alongside Henderson and Wijnaldum, which is probably the judgment call for him, which obviously a few days ago everyone was hoping that Thiago would be back in time. That's clearly not going to happen now. So I think it's effectively a choice between Milner and Keita. That would be the two most obvious options. Of course, some people have said to me this week, well, why not play 4 attackers and play 4-2-3-1?
Yeah.
Find room for Firmino, and then then it almost solves the Jota Firmino dilemma. But
he doesn't like playing expansive away from home, doesn't he?
No, not in a game as big as this, and especially as you said before, it's not a game where Liverpool have to win. They don't need to take big risks. I just think he'll want to have solidity and control in that midfield, which will mean playing 4-3-3. Which will mean it's whether he goes with Milner, and I think Milner only came off the bench, didn't he, for the last 20 minutes or so the other night. Same with Keita. Both of those players should be reasonably fresh, so I'd expect one of those two to start.
What was I going to say to you? Melwood. I think it was the last press conference today at Melwood. I'm sure you have a few stories from Melwood yourself, and I think we move to Kirby now next week or the following week. Have you any story or any little insight into Melwood? I mean, it has a lot of history.
Yeah, a huge amount of history. I mean, I'll certainly miss the regular visits there. It's because of COVID. I haven't stepped foot through those gates since March. So
wow.
And of course, back then I never envisaged that would be the last time I'd be going there. So I think from the first time I walked in there, probably 2005, you just feel the kind of the weight of history around the place, going right back to Shankly's days. It's just, when you think of Liverpool Football Club, Melwood is just one of those, iconic places. And, especially having, been in a very privileged position where, I've been certainly under Brendan Rodgers and then under Jurgen, in the manager's office overlooking the fields. And it's I think it is genuinely sad. I think, but it also represents progress, because I remember speaking to Klopp quite soon after he took over, and I think it was a source of frustration for him, the fact that, although Kirby's not, it's only 8 miles away, that's still a significant when you're as busy as he is, and when ideally, you'd love to just be able to walk a couple of 100 yards to be able to see Alex Inglethorpe or to see one of the youth coaches. And so I think, logistically, it'll certainly make things a hell of a lot easier, everyone being together on one site. I think Klopp was also, I think because modern football has changed, backroom staffs have become so big. You've got the data and analytics guys as well. Melwood had almost, Liverpool had outgrown Melwood, really. I think Klopp would get frustrated at the lack of, things like even basic things like a lack of rooms for meetings was an issue. And then, of course, because Melwood's surrounded by housing, you've had problems at times with team news leaking out because people will see who's training, who's not training. People climbing on the bins and peering over, and of course Kirby will give Liverpool a lot more privacy on that front. And I haven't been, because of the lockdown, I haven't been to the new part of Kirby since it's been completed. I had a tour when it was nearly completed back in about February time. But from what I saw with my own eyes and what I've seen kind of photography wise since, it basically goes from putting Liverpool, probably in the kind of lower half of the table in terms of training facilities to being up there with the best complexes in the whole of Europe, because a huge amount of work went into it in terms of fact finding across Europe, going into different clubs, picking the best of everything and going, right, this is what we're gonna build. And the owners have backed Klopp's vision to the hilt really with this 50 million quid invested, and it'll be a big part of Klopp's legacy because as he said today, it's not just about him and what he wants. This is about putting Liverpool Football Club in the best possible place, for the next 50, 60 years.
Yeah, that's what FSG have done really well. They don't just think of the here and now and this season or even next season. They need to be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons ahead of themselves, don't they? In everything, even in buying players, in everything.
Yeah, and I think that probably gets overlooked a little bit at times as well, because obviously with the modern obsession of all, we need another signing, we need another centre back, we need another attacking option. And for them, it's always been about building the club off the pitch as well as on the pitch. And of course, the main field's the best example of that. But now it's the training ground. The new club shop compared to what Liverpool had before is, the transformation is huge. The other improvements at Anfield. Just things like I wrote a big story last season on the pitch in terms of the importance to Klopp that he regards that in terms of Liverpool's unbeaten home record, in terms of just completely, redoing, not just the playing surface, but everything in terms of the irrigation and the heating system below it. So right from top to bottom, they're always looking at how they can improve Liverpool. And it's not just about success this season. It's about putting the club in the best possible shape for years and years to come.
No, it is, and I've noticed that with them. They're absolutely brilliant. Another thing we just tipped on, we're going to let you go very soon, but no fans in the stadium. I think I talked to you about it before. It's just not the same. I mean, I have Sky Sports, I've BT and all over in Ireland to watch the games, and you can turn on crowd noise and all this, but to be honest, James, it is not the same. There's no atmosphere. And I mean, you go to the games, you're privileged enough to go to, especially the Anfield games. What do you think sitting there? I know you're working, but it can't be the same.
No, and it's one of those, I feel kind of a bit ungrateful saying it, because you're right, I am very privileged that I still get the chance to go to them. But I'd be lying if I said to you they're really enjoyable experiences, because they're not. Because to me, even in a working capacity, the best things about covering live football, certainly from a journalist perspective, is I would still meet up with mates before the game, whether that's in a pub or outside just for a chat. Of course, that's not happening. Then you've usually got the media room where you inevitably bump into a lot of former players, club officials. There's no media rooms at the moment, and that is completely bitten the dust. You literally turn up, you have your temperature taken, you fill out a survey to satisfy the health criteria. You have your mask on, you get taken to your seat. You're not allowed to sit within 3 or 4 meters of anyone else. You don't speak to anyone. You're up in the very top tier of the main stand, so you don't really even have the kind of luxury of being able to hear things pitch side that can sometimes give you some fascinating insight, because you're so far away. And it's pretty grim, to be honest, because they are just soulless occasions, and it does, and I've primarily only been going to all the home games because they've limited how many journalists are allowed in stadiums now, because of course they want to have as fewer people inside the grounds as possible. We, as an organisation, we only get the Athletic one press pass, so it tends to be whoever the home reporter is uses it. So for the away games, I've usually been writing my articles based, watching games on the TV, and when you've got the fake crowd noise, I think it does create a bit of a false picture in terms of what it's like, because I can tell you, been sat there in an empty ground, it's very, very different when the players can hear every single word that they say to each other. And I've been surprised at how good the football has been in the absence of fans, to be honest, because I genuinely, it's amazed me just when Liverpool have really clicked, a bit like they did against Arsenal at home in the Premier League, probably in that first half. I thought it would be almost impossible to play at that tempo and intensity.
Yeah.
Without fans. We all know just how crucial, that support, the inspiration that it provides from the stands. Because for the most part, you feel like, you might be, it might really be a big occasion. Say even this Sunday, Man City, Liverpool should be, real massive occasion, yet it will still have the feel of almost like a training exercise because the stands are empty.
Yeah, that's true. Do you know what as well, I think, because of being so many weird results and weird performances, the 7-2 Villa, the 5-2 Leicester, Man City, I think that has to do with no crowd. I think that has something to do with, I mean, you never see that. You never see it.
No, it's there's too many weird results, isn't there, for it not to be linked. And I think also as well the fact that, I think especially, but just also the circumstances surrounding this season where, pre-season wasn't normal. It was a lot shorter than usual. The schedule where, the season obviously started a lot later than normal, yet the same number of games are being crammed into it. And, I think you only have to look at the number of away wins to see that, home advantage has pretty much disappeared, because there is no home advantage now without fans. And, I just, it's a shame, obviously, the fact that I know Liverpool were working really, really hard to try and get certainly, initially 12 or 13,000 back in the ground for, it was going to be late October at one point. And then obviously the kind of the second wave of COVID put paid to that. But, as we were saying before about, the extensive testing and all the rest of it, you just really hope that, not too far into 2021, we can get back into a position where fans are allowed back in again, because it's just not the same. I think it's better than not having any football at all, but it's a real pale imitation of what we all know and love.
It's sad, actually. Before you go, we're going to touch on your new book. You have a new book out. I think it'd be a great Christmas present, especially Christmas coming up on the horizon. For a Liverpool fan, or even just a football fan that likes reading books. Just give us a quick synopsis on the book.
Yeah, it's called At the End of the Storm. So it's essentially a kind of keepsake from the title-winning season of 2019-20, and I'm really pleased with it. It's basically the back page. The publishers approached the Athletic and said, look, we've loved the coverage over the course of the season. Have you thought about, entering into an arrangement to put the best of it into a book? And I think the bosses at the Athletic thought, what a fantastic idea that is. So, I kind of worked with them to try and pick the different pieces that we felt made the most sense in terms of telling the story of the season, right from the pre-season tour in Boston at the start of the July, right through to, what was it, probably over 12 months later when the trophy was finally lifted after the lockdown. So there's, as well as my own work, there's some fantastic stuff in there from Simon Hughes and Oliver Kay and Rafa Honigstein and Daniel Taylor. One of the things I love about working for the Athletic is, you get to work with so many incredibly gifted journalists, and there's a real wide variety of things, right from the exclusive interviews I did with Jurgen Klopp and Pep Linders and Tom Werner, FSG, right down to Cy Hughes went to Egypt and retraced Mo Salah's early steps as a footballer. Ollie Kay spent time in Senegal and watched the Man City game last season with Sadio Mane's family. That was probably one of my favourite pieces in the book, that one. And Danny Taylor wrote a fantastic piece about the importance of Michael Edwards in terms of the recruiting of this title-winning team. So hopefully there's a wide variety in there that will entertain people, and I think as well, hopefully it probably opens up the athletics coverage maybe to a new audience that not everyone has the app on their phone or logs in on their desktop to read the Athletic. So I think hopefully the book being there, people will pick it up, give it to loved ones and friends as a Christmas present, and if they like what they read, they might subscribe to the Athletic on the back of it. So so far so good in terms of I've had some really nice positive feedback on it.
Yeah, as I said, it'd be a nice present for Christmas coming up, and a lot of people are reading a lot more books because there's probably not much you can do. You can watch football and read books, but you can't even go to the pub or a restaurant or anything anymore. So that should help in book sales. But do you know what I said to you earlier? I'll probably get a copy or two off you signed. I'll pay for them. Don't bother me. But I'll do a competition for the viewers.
Definitely,
and stuff. And that might be a good idea, something like that.
Yeah, not a problem, Dave. I'll stick a couple of copies in the post next week.
James, it's been absolutely brilliant, as usual. Enjoy your weekend. Get that test done, and I hope it is negative. And let's beat City on Sunday.
Fingers crossed. Cheers, Dave.
Cheers, mate.
Take care, mate. Speak to you soon.
Bye. Bye.